Adventure clearly is dealing with uncertainty. You know, an adventure is a journey with an uncertain outcome. The people who go to Mount Everest go to Mount Everest to seek out the uncertainties and the challenges of that unknown world, recognizing that there are no guarantees, recognizing that in challenging yourself against difficulty and uncertainty, you can discover something new about yourself.
John Amatt, one step beyond. Risk, challenge, change. Leading expeditions to remote regions for more than 35 years. Exploring some of the most extreme landscapes on the planet. John Amatt, part of the first team to climb Europe's steepest mountain face, the 5,000-foot Troll Wall. Leader of the first Canadian expedition to reach the summit of Mount Everest. Going one step beyond. Taking the risks that lead to change.
It's only when we are forced to struggle by some kind of external event, perhaps over which we have no control, or when we choose to struggle by challenging the status quo and setting difficult goals for ourselves, it's only then that we discover what we're really capable of achieving. I am, for example, the man I am today because at a very early age, growing up in England, I was very shy, very insecure. I lived in a very protected world. My father was a senior bank executive, a very conservative profession. My mother was a full-time homemaker, always there when I needed help. And it wasn't necessary for me as a kid to take any risks with my life, and as a result, I had no confidence. And I can still remember a family holiday. I think I may have been 8 years of age. We were driving around in the car. We had become lost. And my dad asked me to get out of the car to go to speak to a stranger, to ask that man for directions back to our hotel, and I was so intimidated about the idea of speaking to one stranger that I refused to even get out of the car. I now make my living speaking to strangers. I've created a strength out of what had been a limitation by acknowledging that weakness and by challenging it and myself against increasing difficulty on mountains all over the world. Because when you confront fear, it recedes in front of you. When you run away from fear, it only grows in your mind. In fact, I've come to believe that fear and anxiety is really just nature's way of focusing our attention on the task at hand. And if that's true, and we're not feeling a little bit anxious, clearly we're not paying attention to what's going around us. Clearly we're clinging to the status quo of the past and not seeking out those new opportunities of the future. Laurie took pictures of everything around in the panorama, the landmarks, the mountains, his Sherpa companions. And then, of course, he decided it was time to get a picture of himself on the summit. And it was at that point that he realized he'd run out of film. He started to hunt around in his backpack to find that little 2-ounce canister of spare film that he always carried, and he realized in the urgency to get going that morning he'd forgotten to bring any spare film. He never did get a picture of himself after all that effort. There is a small consolation, though, if you look carefully in the sunglasses of the man on the right-hand side. But you know, pictures aren't important because you don't learn anything from looking at a picture. Standing on the summit isn't even that important because you don't learn anything standing on the summit. The important thing, of course, after an achievement like this is to step back, digest the experience, learn the lessons, and then you can gaze out towards those new plateaus of endeavor out there which are only now possible because of that new learning that has just taken place. I should tell you, incidentally, that I did not personally stand on the top of Everest on this expedition. I was one of the leaders of the team. It wasn't my job to stand on the summit. My job was to make sure somebody did. Because in our definition of team success, when one person climbed that mountain, the entire team had achieved the goal. And it didn't matter who it was as long as one member of our team reached the top of this mountain.
John Amatt, one step beyond. His formidable Everest expedition was televised live throughout Canada and on ABC's Nightline. John Amatt, founder of One Step Beyond Worldwide, an innovative education and motivation company. Author of Straight to the Top and Beyond, in which he uses the metaphor of his own adventures to develop an approach for scaling the heights of today's unpredictable global environment.
When you set a goal for yourself,